stitch marker knitting, and that is okay. If I don't Hello and welcome to a knitting vlog. I thought it would be fun to take you along on a few days of realistic knitting for me in the city. However, it's got a little spin because I am attempting to be monogamous with my botanist shawl by Joji Locatelli. I really want to finish this one up and I'm having a lot of fun knitting it, but I find that I'm not picking it up. Like I'm picking up other projects instead of this botanist shawl, but when I do pick up the botanist shawl, I enjoy it and I can't put it down. So trying to be monogamous with it over the next few days to see if monogamous knitting is really worth all the hype that I hear it is, because I am absolutely not a monogamous knitter. I think maybe I'll get into my thoughts on knitting one project at a time a little later, because I am heading out the door to our picnic, but I've got my, what is this called? Portofino market bag by Two of Wands. I crocheted this past March. I've got our picnic pillows. It's always nice to have a little pillow to rest your head on when you want to take a nap in the sun. I've got my knitting, some headphones, snacks, and then Jake has the blanket and water and other like sneaky snacks and picky bits. So I'm gonna head out soon, but I think we have a fun few days planned. Tomorrow we might go to a coffee shop and do some knitting there. And yeah, we'll see where the next few days take us and how far I get on this shawl. I'm not even sure if I'll be able to make it through this whole video without knitting on something else, so we will see. But we're gonna head on over to the park for a nice little afternoon of knitting. Just got back from the park and I wanted to give you a little check-in on how my knitting went today, or how much I knit today. And I realized I actually didn't even show you where I was starting. So I've been using these little green stitch markers to show my progress for every whip Wednesday. So this is my first whip Wednesday, my second whip Wednesday, and I think I was like one row just above this lace section. So I didn't do a ton at the park. We were there for almost 3.5 hours, I think just shy of 3.5 hours, like 3 hour 15. And I didn't do a ton of knitting. You know, you get sidetracked. You just want to like lay a nap in the sun and it's so lovely. But this is where I am at the moment. So I'll put a little stitch marker. I guess maybe I'll do a different color. Let me see in my basket. I will do, maybe we'll do blue for, oh no, but blue, I'll do yellow for this video so we can see how much progress I make being monogamous over a few days. I'm curious to see if being monogamous over a few days, which is so weird to say about knitting, so I'm gonna say actually only knitting on this botanist shawl. I'm curious if only knitting on this botanist shawl for like 3 days, how that will compare to my whip Wednesdays. So like, will I only be knitting this much, you know, how much is that? I don't know, 6-7 inches over the next 3 days, or will I be blowing through that? Now, granted, I know there are 7 days in between my whip Wednesdays, but I am knitting on so many other things. Maybe not so many other things, but I'm working on other projects. So I probably am only working on each project like 2 or 3 days out of the week. I'm not working on every project every day. So I wonder if 3 days of monogamous knitting will be equivalent to like a full week of knitting on multiple different projects, if that makes sense. We'll see. Lots of questions that I am hoping to answer over the next 2 or 3 days. But anyways, I just put this little yellow stitch marker for where I finished at the park because I don't totally remember exactly where I was above the lace when I started knitting at the park today. That will have to suffice. But yeah, I thought it would be fun to maybe do a little knit and chat on why I am not the biggest fan of only working on one project at a time. And I want to start by saying that I actually haven't really ever tried knitting on just one project at a time. However, for me, I think I really struggle with like new shiny object syndrome. And so I just always am thinking about projects I want to work on, new patterns, projects I want to cast on, new yarn, what I have in my stash, what I have in my queue. It's on a constant loop in my brain, not to mention all of the inspiration that you see online, which it just feels impossible to avoid, especially if you mainly consume knitting and hobby content, which is what I do. I really try to avoid non-hobby content. I try to consume intentionally, I guess, but it's still so difficult to kind of block out and ignore all of like the shiny new patterns and yarns and inspo that you see online. So I think that's like the first reason that monogamous knitting or only knitting on one project it's never appealed to me for that reason, because I see something I want, and if I have the budget to buy the yarn and the pattern, or I already have the yarn for a specific project, I want to cast it on. I just get the cast on, what do you call it? Like the cast on zoomies. There's a big siren going by. So I think that is probably the main reason why I've never really tried it, and what's like deterred me. Going along with that is I do get bored somewhat easily, especially if I'm working on like a stockinette in the round sweater, which I would say are my favorite projects to work on. I do really just love, I don't know, I love the finished object. I do find it very meditative. I like that it's easy to bring with me and do wherever, and you're not counting generally. Nothing's complicated about it. It's a very like mindless knit, or in the round stockinette is very mindless. And I love that, but it's also pretty boring. So I think those are really the two main reasons, the boredom factor and the like shiny new object cast on syndrome are really the two reasons why I've never knit monogamously. But the reason why I'm interested in trying it and seeing how it works for me is because I have so many whips at the moment, and I feel like I'm not making any progress on any of them. Every week I look at them and I know I've worked for 6, 7, 8 hours over the week on all of my knits, and nothing looks like I've made progress. It's like I've made an inch of progress on this. Maybe I've made, a few inches on a sweater. Like I just feel like nothing is ever getting finished, and I feel like I have this giant endless knitting to-do list, which I think weighs me down a little bit. And you don't want a hobby, like you don't get into a hobby for it to weigh you down. You get into it for it to provide comfort, to be a stress reliever, an outlet, somewhere to put your creative energy. So that is why I am attempting to be monogamous with this botanist shawl. So I'm going to attempt it. I don't know, I can't say I feel both hopeful and not hopeful about it. I think I'm definitely going to struggle. Like I'm already thinking about tonight when Jake and I watch our show. We've been watching this show called Physical on Apple TV, which is an excellent show. There's 3 seasons. It has since finished, or about halfway through the 2nd season. But we watch it in the dark, and I'll do it with a neck lamp. And that is exactly what I love stockinette in the round for, is for like TV movie knitting, because you're just going. It's the same thing over and over again. It's mindless. I do find myself looking down at this a lot more than I do a stockinette pattern. I would say this I'm looking down every other stitch I'm looking at. Whereas stockinette in the round, I would say I look down like maybe every 10 or 15 stitches, or if like my needle feels like it slipped or a stitch slipped off. So I find that I'm much more present when watching shows and movies while knitting stockinette. So I think that's my first area where I could potentially slip up. Otherwise, I think it will be pretty easy, other than getting bored. But I am loving my audiobook. I think was it in my last, did I just drop a stitch? But I was talking about my audiobook. I am loving my audiobook right now. I'm listening to The Road to Tender Hearts by, I don't remember the author's name, but I'll put it on the screen. It is so excellent, and I love the audiobook narrator. He's fantastic. So I've been loving that. So I think that will also make knitting on just this project over the next 2 or 3 days much more enjoyable, I guess. It'll make me want to work on this. yeah, we're gonna see where the wind takes us. I don't know if I said earlier, I think tomorrow morning, it's Monday, I might go to a little coffee shop and do some knitting there. I love knitting at a coffee shop, getting a little treat, a little change of scenery. So I think that might be in the cards. And then I think I might also obviously knit in this corner here, potentially do another picnic, sit on the bench down by the river. I don't know. We'll see what I decide to do. Morning, it is now Monday, and I am just sitting here with my second cup of coffee of the day and my botanist shawl. I didn't do any knitting last night after dinner, after I think I had last checked in with you. I just ended up hanging out last night and having just a very chill, do nothing evening, which was wonderful and I think much needed. But this morning with my first cup of coffee, I did knit a few rows on my botanist shawl. I really haven't done too much since the start of this vlog. I think when I started, I was down a bit closer to this lace section here, and I've just worked this garter stitch section, which I am now, I think, halfway through. I have 5 more rounds of the 4-row repeat for the garter stitch section to do. So what is that, 20 rows? So not too bad. I am making progress. I have about 2 hours right now to sit and hang out and like do nothing. So I am going to dedicate as much of that time as I can to working on this. But I just wanted to give you a little update before I picked this up, and maybe actually we'll do a little stitch and chat right now. That could be fun. Before I actually start what I wanted to talk about, I have 2 things I want to talk about. The first is, I was just reminded of this because I am on this row right now and I'm doing increases, so make 1 rights and make 1 lefts. Make 1 rights are, I think, the bane of my existence, but I love a good make 1 left. It like tickles something in my brain. I don't quite know what. So I'm just wondering, is that something anyone else also feels, or is that just me? I don't know. I love a good make 1 left, but make one right is the absolute worst. So that's what I've been doing. I just did my make 1 right, and so now I am working my way over to my make 1 left, which I'm very excited to get to. But that was not what I wanted to talk about. That was just a little side note, something I was reminded of or thought of as I was just doing my make 1 right. But what I wanted to talk about is summer knitting, I think in general, especially as someone, or as people, if you identify with this too or not, who really struggle with like the summertime sadness, little summertime blues. I am just not a warm weather person. I am very sweaty. I get sweaty so easily. Being hot is just not something I enjoy. And of course, as a knitter, my favorite things to knit are sweaters and woolier garments and items. And working on those things in the summer isn't always the most enjoyable experience. So I was just trying to think, for me, what feels like a happy medium between those like cozy, warm, lovely, snuggly fall and winter knits and the, warm weather summer knits. And this shawl actually, I think, is really filling that void for me, I guess, if you could call it that. It's a shawl, so it is something that's intended to keep you a little warm, to provide a layer, some protection. It's a nice, big, comfy knit. It is something that I can wear when it is a little cooler. Like, for example, this is something that I would absolutely bring sailing in the Caribbean as a layer for nighttime or for windier days. So it does kind of have some of those like fall, winter knit qualities, but it's knit up in a linen yarn, a much more summery color. It's honestly not a color I would really wear. I don't quite know why I picked this color, but that's, I don't know, a thought for another day. Anyways, I was just trying to think about how to combat some of my summertime sadness, my summertime warm weather blues that I've been having this summer, and how I can combat that through knitting. And I do think that finding these happy medium projects for me, where I am working with maybe a summer fiber, so it's a bit more comfortable to work on outside or in the heat, but it is a slightly more wintry or warm, cozy pattern. I think that's a happy medium for me in terms of summer knits. Something else I struggle with about summer knitting is finding patterns that interest me. I can't say I'm the biggest fan of many tank tops that I see. Ooh, I'm on my make one left now, so I get my little reward. I'm not the biggest fan of many like tank top patterns that I see, or just like general summer knitting patterns. Maybe, you know, in May and June, I feel really excited about summer knitting. And then by the time it gets like really hot here, I'm over it, and I don't want to think about summer knitting anymore. So I am just itching to get working on all of my fall knits. So that is just what I've been thinking about right now. I really hope that made some sense. I feel like I just kind of randomly rambled for a few minutes there, but if any of that resonated with you, I'd love to know. I'd love to know your thoughts also on summer knits and summer knitting. Do you knit seasonally? Do you just knit what you want when you want because it's your hobby, your knitting, your money, your time? Yeah, I would love to know your thoughts on that. And I think I am going to put on an episode of something good. I'm not really watching anything right now, so I might find something and continue knitting on my botanist shawl for the next few hours. Okay, it is now Tuesday. It is 12 p.m. on Tuesday on the dot, or 12:02, so just after, and I'm gonna head out to the coffee shop. I want to get a little knitting done at the coffee shop. However, sometimes it feels a little performative to knit in public. I really don't know why. Like if it's super busy, I get super self-conscious about knitting, but for some reason, like being on my laptop, reading a book, that all feels normal. I think it's because generally if I'm knitting in like a coffee shop or on the bus, I'm the only person doing that, and if it's busy, it just feels, I don't know, weird. I feel like self-conscious about it. So I did bring or pack a book. I packed, what do you call it? Almost Life by Kieran Millwood Hargrave. I'm only like 50 or so pages in, so I'm not going to give any thoughts on it right now because I feel like that would be a pretty unfair assessment. But I did bring it just in case I feel self-conscious about knitting, or if it's too busy, super busy, then I'm definitely not going to knit, just knowing myself. But fingers crossed I get a nice table in the corner to myself and it's not super busy and I can knit. The coffee shop. It was the perfect like knitting hour and a half. The first 45 or so minutes were pretty empty, so I got a nice table in the corner. I sat and knit for a little bit, and then it did start to fill up as I think people got off for their lunch break. But this cute older couple sat next to me and they were having like such a sweet conversation. It's hard not to eavesdrop when you're just sitting there by yourself, not listening to anything. But they were having such a cute conversation. And when I left, the older gentleman asked me what I was knitting, and he said it looked good. And it was just a very sweet interaction. I definitely started to feel a little more self-conscious about knitting in public when it started to fill up, but I decided to keep going because I was on this third lace section and I have just finished it, or I did finish it at the coffee shop. And then once I finished that, I decided to come home. I thought that was a pretty big accomplishment in terms of this project. So that means that once I finish the next big garter stitch section, I think that means that I am almost halfway through the project. I think the central lace section is the true midpoint. So that is very exciting. And I think this is going to be the last little knit portion from this video. So there you can see how much I knit. I started this video, I think we said just below this yellow marker, but I put this yellow marker on Sunday to show where I was after my little picnic knitting session. So I think I did a pretty decent job in the just over 48 hours that I was knitting. I started knitting on Sunday around 12:30, 1 o'clock, and ended around 3 p.m., maybe a little earlier, 2 p.m. on Tuesday. So that is 48 hours of knitting. And in those 48 hours of knitting, I knit, maybe just a little less than I did in a week. So if you look between these two green stitch markers, that is how much I knit in a week. And then the yellow stitch marker to the top is how much I knit in 48 hours, being completely monogamous with this project. And I stuck to it. I did not work on any other project while filming this little vlog, doing this video. And I think it worked. I think I reached my goal. I answered some questions for myself. The first thing I wanted to know is just, would I get through a decent chunk? And I think I did. In 48 hours, I knit maybe an inch and a half less than I did in 7 days. So that feels really good. The second question that I answered for myself is, would I like monogamous knitting? Is this something I would want to try again in the future or continue to do? And the answer is maybe. I totally see why people are into knitting only on one project at a time. I get that now because you make progress so quickly. You can really see the piece grow and come to life. And obviously, I think you'll just get through projects much faster. However, I did find I had like the boredom issue. Not that I was bored of this project in the past 48 hours, but there were moments where I had knit for like 3 hours on this and I wanted to knit some more, mainly yesterday afternoon. I wanted to knit some more, but not on this. I wanted to pick something else up, but I ended up just not picking up anything because I didn't want to work on this. The other issue I had was during our show last night. So Jake and I were watching our show. It was dark. I was using my neck lamp. I finished this garter stitch section and was starting the lace. However, in the dark at night watching a show, I need to give like my full attention to the lacework sections. So I just ended up putting it down. Whereas if I was working on like a stockinette project or allowed myself to pick up the stockinette project that I'm working on, which is my Michaela sweater or my toffee sweater, then I would have done like 15 or 20 minutes more of knitting on another project. So my big conclusion is that I think I'm going to try to pick days of the week and times of the day that I am monogamous with certain projects. So for example, I might choose to only knit on this botanist shawl 3 days a week. Let's say I choose Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, which is what this vlog is. And then I choose to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday on my Michaela sweater, and then Saturday can be Allie's choice. It can be any whip. I think that would be more helpful for me. And then at nights, if we're watching a show and let's say like this lacework section, I can't really do while watching a show, or I'm working on a project with, let's say, like German short rows in the shoulders or the arms, and I don't want to do that while watching a show, I can work on a different project then. But I will assign certain days of the week for certain projects to be the priority. I feel like my thoughts are not coming out how I'm hoping they sound, so I hope that makes sense for you. But I think that is kind of what I've learned about monogamous knitting. I don't think I would like it if I were only knitting on this for 2 or 3 weeks straight. Now, granted, if I were only knitting on this for 2 or 3 weeks straight, I would finish it within those 2 or 3 weeks, but I don't know. That's not something I am willing to do. I like variety. I like having choices. Do I need 400 whips? No, but I think 2 to 4 whips at a time is my sweet spot, and 2 to 4 whips that all provide something different. So maybe one that is in the round and easy, something that maybe challenges my brain a little bit more, something small that I can carry with me on the bus. So different projects for different scenarios. But overall, I get why people are monogamous and only knit on one project at a time. Will that be me? No, but I may try to implement some sort of knitting guidelines, let's say, for myself, or a weekly knitting schedule. So I'm gonna try that for the next few weeks and see how that works. I don't know if I'll vlog it or not, but that is my botanist shawl. That is how much I worked on this past 48 hours, a little over 48 hours, and I'm really proud of myself. So I think I'm going to sign off here, but if you have made it this far, I would love to know in the comments if you are a monogamous knitter or not. I will pin a little comment and you can respond to that or reply with your own comment. I'd love to know your thoughts on knitting only on one project at a time, why you like it, why you don't. Anything that might change my perspective or convince me one way or the other. I would love to hear all of your thoughts. But that is everything. And again, thank you so much for joining me in today's vlog, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.